Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. Joining us right now on the phone from Fort Morgan, Colorado is former Republican Congresswoman Marilyn Musgrave. She is currently the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life group, and it's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
All right, so right now we're going to take a look at an audit of Planned Parenthood and other family planning groups that receive federal funds being conducted right now by the Government Accountability Office at the request of more than 50 members of Congress. This probe follows a recent settlement in Texas that forced Planned Parenthood of the Gulf Coast to repay $4.3 million to the feds, the state of Texas, and the whistleblower who exposed alleged Medicare fraud. Now, Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott has said that this clinic in Lufkin, Texas, was billing Medicare for services that were never rendered, not medically necessary, or not covered by Medicare. Do we have any evidence at this point that shows this specific problem was more widespread than this one clinic in Texas?
Well, I think there will be more whistleblowers and really former employees coming forth from these clinics. There's so many things happening in this arena right now. When you think about the bright light that's being shed on clinics, whether they're Planned Parenthood clinics or other facilities that provide abortion, the things that we've seen in recent months have garnered a great deal of attention, and not just from the so-called pro-life community. I mean, people that care about women, taxpayers concerned about how their hard-earned tax dollars are spent, are very concerned that we find out what's going on in these facilities. And of course, Planned Parenthood is the giant in the industry, performing the most abortions in this country. And I believe the case in Texas will, that will continue to create a lot of scrutiny for Planned Parenthood around the country. And the fact that I think the pro-choice nurse in Delaware comes to mind when, she left a Planned Parenthood clinic in disgust and said there were meat market style abortions being performed. I mean, that's lining the women up and running them through a facility that's a recipient of taxpayer dollars. So if you care about women, even if you're pro-choice, you can't take that without speaking out.
Yeah, well, the debate over women's health care is one that both sides have used to try to use against the other, and I want to talk more about that in just a second. But I also want to look at the fact that the law does prohibit taxpayer dollars, federal funds, from paying for abortions specifically. But agencies such as Planned Parenthood, as you referenced here, do get millions of dollars each year, as long as that money pays for other services. Do you support, as Congressman Diane Black and others do, ending all federal funding for groups like Planned Parenthood?
I absolutely do, and I made that goal when I was first elected to the House in Colorado. I'm talking about the State House. I served in the House and the Senate in Colorado before I went on to Congress, because everybody knows that money is fungible. And I mean, it frees up more money for Planned Parenthood to perform abortions if they get taxpayer dollars for their other services, which, by the way, we know those services such as cancer screenings. And by the way, there's never been a mammogram ever done in a Planned Parenthood clinic in the United States of America, despite that lie being repeated over and over. They don't do mammograms, but they provide contraceptive services and other services that are declining. And they always like to kind of push the abortion part of it over to the other side, in regard to funding, and, that doesn't constitute much of our business. But Planned Parenthood is in the business of abortion, and they make their money on abortion. And again, those other services that they provide, and they also like to portray themselves as the only place that poor women can get health care. Are you kidding me? There are over 7,000 facilities that provide health care to women around this country where women can get full women's health care. I mean, that's very different from going in, where 92% of pregnant women that go into a Planned Parenthood facility receive an abortion. I mean, they're all about abortion. They're about making their money from abortion. And if you really care about women, you want them to go to a facility where they can receive health care. You know, you need to know if a pregnant woman has high blood pressure, if she has heart problems, if she has substance abuse. You know, I want women to really receive the health care that they deserve. And again, Planned Parenthood is all about abortion, and they want our tax dollars to fill their coffers.
Now, there has been some reporting that since the passage of Roe v. Wade, the number of abortions, at least recently, nationwide, have been trending downward. Do you feel like if the funding was cut off for family planning groups like Planned Parenthood being the biggest one, if that funding was completely eliminated, that trend would continue? There would continue to be a reduction in the number of abortions nationwide.
Well, I absolutely believe that. And I believe that Americans, even those that would consider themselves pro-choice, do not support their tax dollars going for abortion. And, you know, Planned Parenthood has, talked about how abortion is over here and it's separate from their other services. Why don't they have separate facilities then? Why don't they separate them?
And this kind of goes along with my next question I had for you. There's, in lieu of a plan that would completely eliminate federal funding, there's also a push that would force abortion providers to be more transparent with the money that they do receive, these public funds. Can you explain how that might work?
Well, again, they could completely separate the facilities. So where abortions were performed would be totally separate. You know, taxpayers' dollars wouldn't be subsidizing utilities, the mortgage, whatever, those kinds of things that come along with owning a building and providing utilities. They could do that. But no, they like to mix it all together. Planned Parenthood has been masterful in masquerading as a place where poor women receive health care, and maybe the only place that they can receive that. And they have this image of providing all these services, the mammogram myth, the lie that kept being perpetrated. I mean, I've heard it in state committee testimony. I've heard it said at the national level that they do mammograms. I've heard it by bureaucrats that, are in the health department say that they provide mammograms. They have this image that they've portrayed. And I'll tell you what, we are cracking away at that facade, at that image. And this audit is going to be a huge part of that. And I believe that people around the country are crying out for accountability in all areas. And when Americans overwhelmingly do not support their tax dollars going for abortion, this audit is very timely and very important.
There was a similar report released in 2010, but if you allow me to play the other side of this argument here, the president of Planned Parenthood, Eric Ferraro, called this report routine and said it's the same thing that's been actually done 6 times over the past several years. And I'm going to quote him here from a story that I read in Politico. And this is Eric Ferraro, vice president of Planned Parenthood. Quote, "This is just another attempt by opponents of women's health to attack women's access to Planned Parenthood's preventative health services and spread misinformation about the care our health centers provide to 3 million men, women, and young people every year." How do you respond to Mr. Ferrero?
That's really a very tired response. That's the kind of response from a leader of an organization that hasn't had much scrutiny and really doesn't want any. A leader of an organization that has connected abortion as being rights of women, the right of women to have an abortion. They try to equate that with all women's rights. The pro-life movement is growing in this country. And not only are we pro-life, we are pro-women. And women deserve better than what the treatment they've been receiving in these clinics, so-called clinics. I mean, when Planned Parenthood opposes regulations that would bring a facility up to the same standard as any other ambulatory surgery center, you got to wonder what's going on there.
Well, that Texas law, that we saw debated in such a heated fashion in the state legislature that limits late-term abortions and increased standards for abortion clinics, as you mentioned, if that's any indication, the pro-life versus pro-choice debate is clearly well and alive, and it's certainly going to factor into the 2014 midterm elections and, of course, the 2016 presidential primaries and presidential race. But do you expect Democrats to use this new Texas law in similar to times they've used other laws? This Texas law, sponsored by a Republican man, it was opposed very publicly and filibustered by a Democratic female state legislator. Do you think that the Democrats are going to continue to try and use laws like this against Republicans in this quote-unquote war on women's health?
I think they will. I think abortion will be front and center, whether you're talking about 2014 or 2016. But the wonderful thing is this nation is becoming more and more pro-life. I mean, don't think that these clinic regulations aren't making people think, and they're wondering, why in the world would an organization like Planned Parenthood wouldn't want their facilities up to standard? I talked to a doctor in Texas, and he talked about, he said, let's just think of a procedure, a medical procedure, say a tubal ligation or something like that. He said, when a procedure is performed on a patient, things can and will go wrong. He said, you know what? If a woman is undergoing a tubal ligation, she needs access to a blood bank. She needs an anesthesiologist to be available. For heaven's sake, she needs a doctor that has admitting privileges within a clinic, within a hospital, within 30 miles of the clinic. He said, who can oppose those kinds of things? I mean, that's healthcare. That's good medicine. And for the pro-abortion community to oppose those kinds of things reveals what they're all about. The bottom line, money, and they make their money on abortions. And when you look at facilities like those in Delaware, again, where the very pro-choice nurse said, they're running them through. It's meat market abortion. I'm telling you, scrutiny on these facilities is going to reveal a lot. And this, again, this audit is very important at this time. And it's a different day when Planned Parenthood folks can bring up these same old tired arguments, because you know what? People are thinking about this now, and they're wondering how many facilities are like the one in Delaware.
Now, you mentioned accountability. Back to the audit. The GAO says they don't know when it's going to be finished. Do you have any expectations on when you'll get some definitive results?
Well, I don't know when that will be, but I can guarantee you those 50-plus members of Congress are going to want results soon, and I believe they'll be pressing for that, and that's very significant.
All right, former Congresswoman Marilyn Musgrave, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.